I want to ping you about Mao.
2 seconds to get out of this area. You got 2 seconds to escape the camera. Whoa.
What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this shit?
That's my job. Yeah, creative.
Can I see it?
The stat?
Yeah. Which? The mouth. The kill. Oh wait, the secret.
Yeah, it's kind of potato-ish, so maybe we could do like a blurry thing. You know? Or not, no.
Alright. Holy shit, guys.
Kryptonite.
Secret.
Yeah, our game's gonna get harder and harder to film.
We do want to chat with you though.
Okay. So I've been working on AI for the little guys for the most part. Basically these guys' behaviors, getting them to talk. Penn has like this really good set of rules for how guys should behave, making it so that when you choose a little friend, that it makes everybody else a little bit mad. There's like a ripple of upset and bummed outness that happens, and then the other guy then has to start doing different conversations and things like that. So the system that Brandon's working on for chatting with the guys, we have tags in there for when they respond to something. So let's say that you say something that the guy like doesn't understand. So then one of his responses will be like, I don't really know what you're talking about. And then a tag in there will be like shrug. Then our processing thing will have to then play the shrug animation on the guy as he talks, which is like 2 separate animations on top of each other. That stuff, that's what I'm working on like literally right now. Hopefully pretty soon we'll have a good like performance coming out of these guys, and then it's just getting all of them done. Fortunately, like they're a lot simpler emotionally. Like they're pretty much like happy or real sad. And then when they're sad, they only want to do certain things, and when they're happy, they only want to do certain things. So it's pretty easy.
The way Penn has written the script so far is actually really nice because it kind of funnels and directs players in a way where it's like, here are the topics that are interesting to the person that you're talking to, and will kind of like allow you to make progress with them or the story or that kind of thing. Remembering information that you've learned earlier, or like playing off of somebody's likes or interests or that kind of thing. And so intuitively, I think players are going to have a basic understanding of the kinds of things that they should try talking about if they want to get certain things to happen in the game. In addition to that, there are a million different ways to say things. It's like, it's funny because like even when Penn was pitching the game, right, he has the guy sort of like, you want to be my best bud, and then he's like, hey man, yeah, let's totally be that kind of stuff, like semantically and analyzing it and understanding that it's the exact same thing as saying yes, right, like is pretty sophisticated problem. But one of the cool things about the engine that we're using is that you can actually use example input that you want to be handled by your rules to feed to a certain response, and make sure that the system parses it in a way where it funnels into that result correctly. That guy doesn't know what to say. Oh, these guys want to be friends. Coming all over the place. Oh my god. Some technical issues, hold on. Let's see. Here's Big Leg. Let's say hi to Big Leg. Let's be best friends, Big Leg. So that's an example of like an input that probably should have been accepted and wasn't. And then, now he's super excited because I told him I wanted to be his best bud. Yeah, look at his little adorable face. Once we've got the Raz voice in here, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Now that you can actually have conversations with the characters in the game, we're going to just have people play test it, and the game automatically logs everything that everybody says. And so we're going to take those logs and find those things where it's like, oh, that should have been accepted, or that should have gone a certain way in the conversation. Or maybe it's just sort of like, that's an interesting thing to ask. Let's type a custom response for that concept. We can start feeding that stuff back into the game.
Their behaviors are a lot stranger than like a typical like action game or something, because they want to run up to you, but then they kind of get sleepy and sit down. Once they're bummed out, they don't really care about you anymore, and it's pretty rare in a game for, 30 entities to do this sort of stuff. It's like 16, but the next thing I'm going to be working on is getting in all the unique little guys, because they'll be acting differently. But here's Big Leg over here. He's a little different, because he's very slow. He has a big leg. There's a lot of little things that we have to do. Penn wants them to be actually very unique, which is the big problem like the big amount of work for a lot of our animators. We have like a bunch of concepts for what all the guys are going to be, and each one of them has their own essential personality. For AF, the most fleshed out one's probably going to be the big leg character. But then they're going to have like little props, like this guy's got a dog, and the guy with a bike, and the guy with a boombox, and whatever else it's going to be. Like this morning was basically like, here's what we can actually get done. Let's compensate. Like an example is he wanted this guy to ride on the bike.
Yeah.
But that's not super easy because that's a whole lot of custom animations, and then there's other stuff where if he's looking at the player but he needs to go left, like he needs to actually turn his bike and ride it, which is a completely different animation and locomotion set. So basically now he's just going to be like one of the fixed gear guys on the BART train, just holding the bike on his shoulder. Same thing with Dog Guy, probably, since we our animators like got on this project to avoid doing a quadruped because there's another game with a lot of quadruped animation. So we're probably going to have the guy just like holding the dog on his shoulder or at his side or something, and then the dog's head will just move around. Yeah, a little bits of variation, but not as much as ultimately we'd want. But it's not a disappointing amount. It's still going to be pretty weird. In the case of Big Leg, he has mostly the same joints. So a lot of these guys are mostly the same if you look, but well, this guy, for instance, his head's backwards. So his rig is also going to be very different because he has to actually walk backwards. This guy has some different joints because he just floats around. Like this guy might not ever, I don't know, run because he just floats, so we don't have to worry about that animation. Big Leg right now is, functionally, he's 30 lines of prototype script, but they're going to be a lot more complicated as more and more gestures go in. The only one that I'd say is unlikely is Tall Bud, just because I feel like he's going to have drastically more complicated animations, but we've got enough guys who are filling in the anims. I think we're going to get all these, we're going to get all 16 of the people that Penn wants. My favorite is Dead Guy, but he was really easy to get done because he's just, he doesn't animate a whole lot.
Yeah, here's your sound thing. It's like today was all about compromise. It was all about what we can and can't do. And we had a big meeting in the morning where I just brought up all the little stuff that we've all just been talking about. It was like, can we get the bike guy in? Can he pedal? Can we get the guy with the dog in? And it's just like, it was too much. Because there's 16 characters in the game, which is fine, man. It's fine. It's a prototype. So, so it's like, you can hold it? Good. So we don't have to scrap it, And then to make it more funny, I think, we should just pop up this thing that says, egg cooking functionality does not exist. We can't, the tech does not work yet, and just like make this pop-up banner. So this was my thing that I made to sell everyone on this like poking puzzle. And we can kind of do some of this stuff now. But for anything that is we don't have time for, I like this like to turn it into a joke, so that's funny, And it's like it's obvious these games, everyone knows what they are. They're not full games, and so you can make it funny still. I misspelled construction there.
Just kind of wanted to do just kind of get everybody synced up on the script and kind of the experience for the prototype. And we're going to be using this to at least start grabbing the dialogue today. Brian's here, cool. Okay, so this one is going to take some improvisation because this is you're riding the horse, and she basically has jolted you, and you're responding to that. So you're kind of like, ah, yeah. We'll just go wild with it.
Okay. Oh, my nads! Can I do that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was super cool. Issa's son Zeb came in and he played Twig. We've named our characters now. Bellfire is Steed, and Twig is the Sable Boy.
Really? Where are we going, Belle?
The Millhouse Library.
So I get to ditch work and go to the library? Awesome.
Yep, I need you to go and grab the Guild's books that thing.
But I thought you were mad at me, because of last time, the potato incident.
So just kind of, they have some history in the back. We don't really know what that history is, what the potato incident is. Let's just hint at it. And then also kind of establishing Bellfire as the boss. Like she's paying this guy to be her stable boy. and she needs him to help grab the book from the library. The next one is like, this would never happen, but you know, imagine you picked up a book that you weren't supposed to be reading. And so it's kind of like you're flipping through it and you're like, I'm not old enough for this one.
Oh, I'm not old enough for this one.
That was awesome.
Wait, there's a wizard section?
And then by messing with the wizard books, something exploded or poofed. And you're like, magical!
Whoa, magical.
I think it was my first time directing voice acting. I don't remember. I've done some mocap stuff, but I haven't done actual voice before. Also, you're working with a kid, and he hasn't really done this before. Although he was in Force Unleashed, much younger, and that's pretty cool. It's tough because it's one of those things where you want to get good performances, but you don't want to annoy or push people too much. It was funny because we went to dinner with Penn Ward the other night and asked him a bunch of questions about his philosophy on it, and he was really adamant to like act it out with them, go over it themselves, like let them get a couple takes out, and just get into the spirit of things. I think that worked really well. So I think I picked up some tips from Penn, and that was awesome. He was just very giving of information about how to get good stuff out of voice actors. That was really cool. Can you do a couple more, just like, you're in the car and you were just looking out the window and you're like, and then all of a sudden the car just kind of jolted a little bit and you're just like, whoa.
Okay, what about like a hoop? One of those, or?
Yeah, but a little bit more vocally with it too.
Okay.
It's kind of weird. Like the idea is that, let's say that the real spell in this book is like, Abba Doobie. And you were like, Abba, and then you're like, Doobie! Maybe that'd be something we do. I don't know. But like that was the idea I had in my mind, but I don't know if it's really gonna work. But you're kind of out of it, and then you're kind of woken up, like, whoa.
That'd be kind of hard to do when you're playing it before they jolt, so that'd be kind of hard to put in.
Exactly. So I think it's gonna be in response to the jolt. So I think we really just want that. I just got jolted into, saying something. You know how when you like practice like vowel sounds, kind of like A, E, I, O, U, or ah. So see if we can, so you got like a whoa, maybe there's a oh, and then there's a ah, and there's a yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to think what would get us more of these sounds. I think that might be a good way to do it.
No, it's more grunty.
Yeah, that felt painful.
Yeah.
Try it like a da, imagine like your D-A-A-A, right?
Da!
Yeah, that's
Make Arnie sounds just.
Get to the chopper.
Gotta do the chop wow.
Yes.
Yeah, just do a little.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Wow!
All right, I think we got it. Sweet. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Kick ass, man.
But right now, like environment-wise, we're a little behind. Quite a bit behind, but we have a plan for them all, so hopefully it'll go smoothly.
Well, environment art mainly, but we're a pretty small team, so we're jumping around and doing little bits of everything. Jeff's doing most of the technical setup, and that's kind of his role. And Derek asked me to help out a little bit with the organisation and checklists and making sure we're hitting the right things at the right time, that kind of stuff. Basically just so he doesn't have to worry about everything on the art side as well as having to do, all of the team lead stuff. Because he's sitting right there, it's easy to just bounce ideas around and talk about what we're going to do with his concepts, and then I've been able to sketch some things out and block some things out really quickly, and I think it's cut down a lot of iteration that we might have gone through. And then I've been able to block stuff out and he's painted over it really quickly, so yeah. Well, we used to working with each other, and it's just we switched roles for a couple of weeks, but that's fine. I think we both agree that we should start as simple and spare as possible and just try and get really cool lighting and good light and shadow, and then see how much detail we want to add in the scenes and how much texture we want to put in the scenes, and I think it's going to work. Lots of hidden and half-suggested stuff in there. It will save us a lot of work. We were looking at the car scene, and I found a couple of animated GIFs from noir movies of driving at night, and you can't see anything. It's just a little piece of road and a white line, and everything else is dark. So I think we'd originally been thinking that was going to be a lot more complicated, and it just doesn't need to be. So it's a big advantage. We already talked about using cutouts and 2D stuff in the background rather than making a ton of mesh. We tried to block out the environments as quickly as possible. By the end of last week, basically we had things blocked out just for scale and proportion, and Derek's been painting over those. So now we're going back in and trying to detail that stuff up. Jeff was working on the alley. He changed the alley yesterday, so it feels a little bit more like the concept. So it's just trying to go through the game, doing a pass at a certain level of detail, and then go back and do another one at the next level, and just try and bring everything up in phases.
It's weird because it's like, I think because it's sparse, it's harder. It's like the assumption that because there's less things in there, it's easier to do. But when in reality, when there's less things in there, it's more important that they're like perfect, you know, because any flaw is like multiplied by 1,000. We can definitely hide a lot of things in silhouette, being it's a noir, but I think that sort of behooves us to make the parts that he wants to pop, like the alleyway scene. This scene, for instance, I mean, you'd say, oh, these buildings are just completely black and it doesn't matter, but the reality is we got to put this, we have to make sure that the spec and normal map for the brick walls work really well. Because from this scene, you can't really see this wall, but once you get over here, you're still going to see some cast shadow. And then on top of that, this background, it can't just be a painting. Like, we have to put some depth into it. So like the foreground scene is relatively simple, but I think this background scene is ridiculously complex. It's like deceptively complex, you know, where you go, oh, just put some cubes in there with some windows painted on it, it'll look fine. But if you do that, it ends up looking flat. And you need to, I mean, these aren't really building sized, right? I mean, they're probably like 3 or 4 times the size of a character. It is literally a backdrop in a theater sense. And you got to fake like depth and scale and all of that stuff. And it's super difficult. We talked about Sin City for a little bit. I think we're going to do that for a lot of the environment puzzles, where Miller would, you know, he would do things that were like an important thing in a scene would be, you know, everything's black and white, but then there'd be like this like pop of red or yellow or just like a very solid color. So like when things are important in the environment and you go into this like focus mode, that's how you're going to perceive these things, where, you know, it sort of like mutes everything else and this thing sort of pops out. I'm getting pretty confident in that this is going to turn out pretty cool in the end. We just have to get past that hump where you're just like, oh my God, nothing is working. And I've been watching a lot just cinematography. Yeah. It is kind of this weird mix of like stage and actual film. Like it was that sort of transitional period where when you look at some of the earlier noir films, they were all early film was they filmed it like it was you were in an audience at a theater. So I'm trying to incorporate some of those techniques. I can't really take away control of the camera from the player because they're going to do Oculus support, and apparently that makes people vomit when you fly the camera around. So I don't know. I think we should just give people a bunch of barf bags. But a lot of it is setting up the scenes so when the player enters in on them, you get this vista, right? You get this view. Taking Derek's direction, trying to recreate it as good as possible, and then making sure when the player enters that scene, they're at least presented with what you would want to be like a cinematic establishing shot. This is the initial setup that I have in here. You know, just really basic shapes for all of these buildings. Derek did draw this vertically, and everybody's monitors are horizontal, so that's an additional wrinkle in this whole thing. But it's definitely at a nice starting point, I think. And then, you know, you can see here, like, here's the city, right? Like, it's all totally fake, and it's just trying to get that look of depth and whatnot that we're going to have to use materials and lighting to fool the eye. You can't walk past this back wall here, so it should be okay. Is it this one? Yeah, so this is what the alley looks like in the game right now, with our broken materials and no lighting except for one spotlight. But it's getting there. You can kind of see what I was talking about earlier, where like, since the scene is so simple, things like the normal maps and the specular are super important, because that'll instantly make this more of a space instead of just being like tones on a surface, you know. It's definitely coming along though.
Yeah, I think we can get away with being really suggestive with a lot of this stuff and not really get too bogged down, because you just can't remember all the other bits that aren't there. Yeah, I think it's perfectly fits. So.
But what are the costs of action to resolve those things successfully such that you don't suffer those?
The cost of an action, first of all, is your time, right? Because edicts takes time to do. So maybe you have several of these scenarios come up.
So you're kind of having to choose which bomb goes off, you're like in a situation where you're faced with multiple crises and you only have a certain amount of time to act on these. Okay.
And then you might have other interesting things going on too. Like, I mean, you could, I don't think every single scenario that triggers needs to be an extortion scenario. It could be like some cool one too, or like, not cool one per se, but like maybe you get to name a city or something, like something that like fun.
Something that feels positive.
Right.
Something that isn't just like, oh, it's a crisis and it's horrible and you'll, yeah, okay.
It feels like there's still like aspects of the game that are like being designed, or people are sort of like unsure of how it's going to work.
We had to sort of get the, like, okay, what is critical path into the game? And so now we're past that, kind of the hump of that, but now we have to focus on like, okay, well, what are the other scenarios going to be like? Because these critical path scenarios are like, here, what do you want to be called? Or like, you know, what is your stamp going to look like? They're really not, like, they're interesting and they introduce interesting stuff, but they're not really the core of what the game is going to be, right? So a lot of the questions that JP had were like, what are the interesting scenarios, or like, you know, what direction should we take here? Do we have all the interesting sim variables that we might need for this? And it's the heart and soul of the game, so it feels like this big thing that feels or like that needs more direction and stuff. And I think that's why we had to have that, you know, design meeting.
Yeah, okay, so that's another thing that we've got on the scenario sheet here. We've got like, you know, you can launch a propaganda campaign to do something, to get people psyched up about something. Is the player launching propaganda campaigns in response to something? Or is it just something that they decide like, hey, I want to like kind of rack up good morale, you know, or just positive sentiment for X?
So I think the easiest way to decrease unrest is to do a cult of personality propaganda. Like, it's just propaganda with like boosting your own image. It's the easiest way. And maybe fear won't go up, but unrest will go down. And basic needs will, like, nothing is affected except that unrest goes down. I mean, maybe fear can go up. I don't know. I suppose that's up to you. I don't mind either way.
Like, these are kind of internal versus external states within the citizenry. Like, the fear is what they're thinking, whereas the unrest is what they're doing. And unrest makes them, if unrest is low, then they're not lobbing Molotov cocktails at your palace, but maybe they're thinking about it because they're afraid of you. And, you know, cool. Yeah. All right.
So I imagine there's a couple of things that will just be fun to do for the player. Like, for instance, naming shit is kind of fun. There's like, drawing your own stamp, whatever, neither here nor there. But designing propaganda, I think, might be really fun.
What is running a propaganda campaign about a particular subject, other than yourself, which directly decreases unrest? What do those sorts of things do?
So I was thinking that the way it could work is, like, remember we were talking earlier about the competency of your minister and how let's say you do agriculture development, but your development minister is incompetent and it fails it. So the fact that you win agriculture increases the health, or the basic needs are met better by your people, but not as good as it could be because your minister failed. So it's still, there's a net win, but just not smaller than it could be. Well, if you had done propaganda for that, maybe that counteracts the incompetency of your minister a little bit. So basically, right now,
people work harder because they believe in the plan more, even though it is poorly implemented.
Exactly. That's kind of the idea.
So it really just increases the chance for success for...
Oh yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. It increases the chance for success.
Okay. Would we want that difference communicated to players, or this might be something where we can, where in the wrap up text, the player could enter a slogan for industrialization, which could, I mean, if we're just letting them input a string, it could just be arbitrary, like, hey, don't be a poopy butt. Work in the field. I don't know. Just, I mean, you know, players always input silly,
That's a great one for responding to edicts for, like, so you basically you do your propaganda and they're like, oh, I really like what you did, and then they're like, by the way, what would you like to say? Like, we need a little message, and then like, don't be a poopy butt.
Right. Yeah. You know. So then in the wrap up, in the end of era 1 text, it would be like, you know, improving the breadbasket of the motherland initiative went forward under the cry of "Don't be a poopy butt."
Yeah. Like, people chanted, "Don't be a poopy butt." about
Yeah. Okay.
everything, yeah.
All right. Cool. So yeah. Okay. So propaganda has a slogan.
It seems like you're not quite at that point yet where you can play through the game. Like, isn't a lot of it like just theoretical stuff?
I mean, the game, like, you can do things in the game. It's like playable and like the simple. But yeah, you can't enjoy the game as people will hopefully be able to enjoy it when the prototype's over, because like we're not quite there yet. This is something that's going to require iteration, and just we're going to have to like take it a step at a time. Or like, oh yeah, this doesn't quite work. Okay, what can we do to fix it? Because we don't want to go forth and just like rush and make it like a crappy thing. Spend so much time and resources on that. Like, we're kind of trying to be a little bit more careful about it, but at the same time, staying on schedule. I think it's like a weird balancing act, I guess. I know what my idea is like, but if we actually try it and it sucks, like it's like essentially my idea is kind of a paper design, or simulation games are kind of like a weird paper design where if it just doesn't feel like, it's just everything has to come together, and if it just doesn't feel right, then it's just not going to be any fun. So that's why tonight I'm going to hopefully get the edict interface in, because I think that is like kind of a physical interface, and it's going to feel like you're doing something. Whereas before it's like you're answering calls and like clicking through stuff, and that doesn't feel quite, I mean, you are doing things, but it just doesn't feel as active as it could. Yeah. Camden had a really, like, he picked like a really great opening song for the start screen. That's awesome, and it just like, yeah, anyway, you guys should just check in with him.
This was the start menu thing I did. I wish you guys could see the visuals, because they have like blimps and all kinds of crazy stuff. But this is what I came up with. Which Anna really liked. She thought it was really fun, really dramatic. But what I've been doing is actually mining public domain, going into a bunch of Russian composers. That was Dvorak. I've got Rimsky-Korsakov, Tchaikovsky. I'm hoping to do a Mussorgsky piece, but he's kind of harder to find. All of their music compositions generally are public domain, but I have to make sure that the MIDI files that I import are also public domain.
So if you're finding MIDI files, does that mean you're assigning instruments? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're using your instrument library.
Yeah, which has been really, really quite helpful. Because that way I can voice the orchestral stuff any way I want, which would be really good to keep it consistent. And then this project has been really good about keeping focus on how much time we have. And if I was to sit down and do a bunch of original music, it would take a lot of time.
Every single thing is like just going slowly, or not going slowly, but slowly coming together, and it relies on other things. And what I see is kind of my work, because I know the Reds engine so well, as I'm trying to stitch it all together. So yeah. This weekend I got like a lot of time to do that, but during the day I just can't seem to find like enough time to do programming. So.
Are you prepared for it to be this way?
I thought I'd have a little more time to program, honestly. Like, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I even read like people, like there's like a survey you fill out or something after you're done, and they're like, what advice do you have for future leads? And every single one of them was like, except for people who already had done it many times before, it was like, yeah, you're not gonna have any time. And it's like, if you think you're gonna be able to do whatever it is you do during the day, just stop and like get an extra person for that. And it's totally true. It's crazy.